October. As we welcome you back to the Patrick Netherton Show on 1130 The Tiger, we bring in one of our favorites, former LSU football head coach and now Big Ten analyst, a guy who can speak to this with a heck of a lot more clarity and certainty than I can, with a lot more expertise. He is Gerry DiNardo. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing great, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
By the way, does when you're retired from coaching, you know, coach is sort of that honorific like president. You always get called coach no matter what you do. Is that a weird thing for people to call you coach when you're not actively coaching?
No, it's not. It's fairly common, and the good news about it is when you are coaching, they're not always calling you coach. In fact, I've been called a lot of things when I was coaching, other than coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're losing at halftime in Tiger Stadium, jogging into the locker room, no one's saying, "Hey, coach, how's it going?"
Yeah.
They're kind of telling you how it's going, and they're giving you a new name.
Yeah. Well, here's what's also interesting to me. I feel like coaches have it so ingrained that a lot of them start calling everyone coach. I just broadcast games for Northwestern, and I'll go up there, and several of the coaches will be like, "Let me tell you something, coach." And I'm like, "I'm not a coach. I've never been a coach." But they call me coach. I find that so fascinating. I don't know why.
You know, Patrick, Dave Wanstead, Dave was the head coach of Miami and Pittsburgh and the NFL, the Bears. He doesn't know anybody's name at the Big Ten Network. He calls everybody coach.
Yeah.
It's an easy default for him.
Yeah.
So, he never gets a name wrong, whereas I feel terrible. Sometimes I say the wrong name about somebody, or I can't remember who it was, and I'm trying to fake through it and trying to think who it is. He just says coach to everybody and doesn't worry about recognizing people and knowing their names.
There you go. We have one that does that, calls everybody chief around here. They just, "Hey, chief, what's going on?" Everybody's chief, everybody's pal, everybody's buddy. You don't have to remember anybody's names if you call everybody the same thing. All right, let's get into the meat of this. We knew that what the decision was originally made, and you had Kevin Warren coming out and saying, "Well, we're not going to revisit it," and then you have pressure being applied by parents and players and coaches within the league. Give me some idea of where you think this all started in terms of either they feel like they made a mistake, they rushed the process, they just wanted to go back and revisit it with good intentions. What do you think ultimately led to them, the presidents and chancellors, going back and reconsidering this decision?
I think the same thing that has helped them today hurt them when they said we weren't going to play in the fall, and that's messaging, right? Mm-hmm. They put together a 10-game schedule, no non-conference games, had great flexibility. It looked like it was a great idea. They were the first conference to do it, and then shortly after they canceled the season. But as James Franklin of Penn State says, it's not that I was against the decision. I wanted more information. I wanted to be able to tell my players why. Think about this, Patrick. Now, y'all are in a different part of the country, I know. But Duke at Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana, played this past Saturday. Purdue and Indiana, both in the state of Indiana, didn't play. And that's what a player doesn't understand. That's what a parent doesn't understand. It doesn't mean that Notre Dame and Duke were right and Purdue and Indiana was wrong. It just means that the people at Purdue and Indiana can't say why. And you have to tell people why you came to a decision, right? We all know what happened. You tell us why. It's like the play-by-play guy in the booth. Play-by-play guy in the booth tells what happened. The analyst is supposed to tell why. Mm-hmm. Well, that was the spot that was missed the first time around. Today, they told us why. You can still not like it, like the 21-day deal. People are going to complain about sitting out for 21 days. People are going to complain about that 8+1. People are always going to complain about something, but they didn't do anything today, Patrick, where they didn't give a reason why they did it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because to me, Gerry, and I've been, I know a lot of the media is getting vilified for these guys hate football. They don't want football to play, which is ridiculous. Everyone's, there's just people who want an abundance of caution and people who are a little bit more, hey, let's just get through it and make it happen. But I was on the more cautionary side. I was on the, hey, why are we running the college kids and the high school kids out here? Let's let the pros play for a month, and then we'll see what the results are. If everything looks safe, all right, then let the college kids go. But to me, the most fascinating part of this is how every individual league is seemingly coming up with different answers to the same question. And that's the part to me that's confusing. When you have medical experts who are disagreeing on this thing, it really does lead, as you mentioned, to a lot of mixed messaging where the SEC says, hey, our doctors say it's safe to go. The Big Ten says our doctors say it's not. No one knows really what to believe, and it leads to a lot of confusion and really anger.
Well, Patrick, not to get political, but I think we're in a time in our country's history where, there's not a lot of middle ground. There's everybody in their own corners. And so I think part of that bleeds into it a little bit.
Sure.
And it certainly is confusing how that could happen. And I think it's terribly confusing for the players and terribly confusing for the parents of the players. Patrick, the other thing, you said something that made me think of this as well. What we have heard from the best players on the best team. Everybody has to understand this, and maybe this is part of the Big Ten dragging their feet. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it would be for me. As you know, there's 85 scholarships. You can have 105 guys come to camp, and after that, you can go to 120 on your squad. The vast majority of those scholarship and walk-on players will never step foot on the field on any given Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we see the outspoken players, there's a second or third offensive lineman, wide receiver, defensive lineman in the locker room saying, I'm not even going to play on Saturday. And if I get this virus, could there be long-term things with my heart and so on and so forth? So, there's voices that have been heard, but the majority of college football players are not doing on Saturday what they came to do. It's one of the difficulties in managing a roster in college football. In the NFL, it's 53. It's easier. In college, you have 120 guys, and very few of that 120 guys really play all that much of a role on Saturday. We have to protect those guys as well because they don't have a voice. That's why during this whole pandemic, I thought the head coaches better meet with every player individually because there's not going to be a second-team guy standing up in the locker room and saying, this is crazy. This is too dangerous. But he might say it in the privacy of the head coach's office.
Right. Talking to Gerry DiNardo, Big Ten Network analyst. Coach, we know this is about money. Anybody can slice any way they want to, but this is about money. I mean, Barry Alvarez, AD at Wisconsin, came out a few weeks ago and said, we're going to have to raise $100 million if we don't play football because we're going to have such a shortfall. We know it's about money. Is there something sort of untoward about the idea that they're not coming out and saying, hey, this is about money and we need this extra money in our pockets, but is there something untoward about running the kids out there and saying it's for the love of the game and football and all that stuff when right under the surface sits sort of the ulterior motive?
There's no doubt, Patrick, that in recent years, I don't know when it started, maybe 10 years ago, that this has moved from mostly an academic educational enterprise to a business enterprise. Mm-hmm. And there are some good reasons for it to support some of the other sports, gender equity, Title IX, which I think we all believe in wholeheartedly. And the only way I can answer that question, first of all, the short answer would be yes. I would agree with the way you pose the question and the premise on which you pose it. But the only way I can get past that, because I think about this a lot, is I hold the 14 Big Ten presidents responsible for this. Mm-hmm. I don't hold the athletic directors responsible. I don't hold the outspoken football coaches. The ADs are doing their job. They're trying to manage an incredibly difficult business when only 2 of their products sell and make money and the rest of their products lose money. If it was a restaurant or a business, you would cut out the ones that lose money. They can't do that for obviously good reasons. Okay, so when a president says, why are we paying these coaches so much money? He or she is the president of the university. He or she has to sign off on that. So the presidents have lost their footing when they pay a head coach $5 to $7 million and an offensive coach $900,000 when the best professors on campus aren't even coming close to that. So The decision today is squarely on the 14 presidents and chancellors and nobody else.
I've talked about this a lot, Gerry, and I feel like this is sort of a it's almost the hidden financial world of college athletics, and I'm not sure how many people really understand. If people that listen to my show do, but colleges don't save money that they get from the athletic program. They spend basically everything that they make, whether it's facilities or coaching salaries or other programs or whatever, nicer hotels, better merchandise, whatever the case may be. And so when a rainy day hits or a rainy year like 2020, there's nothing to fall back on because they can't claim to be amateurs if they've got a stockpile of tens or hundreds of millions of dollars and they're not giving any back to the players. Is this maybe in some way exposing a little of that the finances of college athletics are maybe backwards and the idea of amateurism, especially with the amount of money that's involved, is a very outdated idea?
Well, the excess is the problem, and the excess is in the football program and the men's basketball program. I mean, that's where the excess is. Patrick, and I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but you said something that prompted this answer, so I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
We're going to see a new normal, right? The last time there was a financial crisis, what did we see? We saw Wisconsin driving to Northwestern Saturday morning to play. It didn't have to be the biggest hotel. There was a few years back, I can't even remember, I could have been in Indiana, where as a Big Ten team, you could bus to the game and you could fly home because they wanted to get you home earlier on Saturday because of Sunday and classes on Monday. So we've been down this road before where, you know what, if we keep going down this road, it's going to be a disaster. Then, Jim Delaney of the Big Ten, he leverages basically the Ohio State-Michigan game. If you don't give us more money, ESPN or whoever he was talking to, I'm going to put it on my own network. Yeah, right. And then that's when the explosion happened. And so since the Big Ten network, the SEC network, and now the ACC network, the Pac-12 network, since those networks started, now we're paying each school $50 million. And like you say, Patrick, if I'm getting paid $50 million, I got to spend $50 million.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see a reboot. We're going to see a new normal. And if you don't have the Taj Mahal right now, you're not getting it. You miss that because we go around all schools in the summer, a bus tour and all that. It's one drop-dead gorgeous facility after another.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really have to be that way, but the first president who signed off that, then the second president did it, then the third chancellor did it, so on and so forth. Well, they're going to pull the reins in.
Yeah, and they're not going to have a choice because the money's just not going to be there. Talking to Gerry DiNardo, Big Ten analyst. All right, so put your coaching whistle back around your neck and walk me through. All right, you've just been told by your president, your chancellor, this is a go. We're starting in late October. What then changes for you? What becomes your focus at that point? How do you believe that these coaches are now changing what they were doing to now prepare for an actual game date?
Okay, so if my strength coach is good, I'm going to get a team that's in good shape. And most strength coaches that are in the Power 5 or Group 5, most strength coaches in the country are really good at what they do. So I'm assuming my team's in shape. But what I have to work on is the things that I could not have worked on until now, tackling and blocking. And I have to do it in such a way that I'm not beating the heck out of my team and I'm not getting anybody hurt. And so, one of the first things I might do for tackling is I might look at my roster and see how many snaps maybe a linebacker on my roster has taken. If he's taken 2,000 game snaps over the last 2 years, drills, not live tackling, I mean, he's been there. If I have a young player who's either never been in a game or has played some and maybe has had 200 snaps last year, I've got to drill him a little bit more. Same thing with blocking. Offensive lineman has played 2,000 snaps. I mean, does he really need to block somebody live very long? No. It can be teamwork. It can be drill work. So blocking and tackling is number one. Special teams. Ordinarily, you spend a lot of time in the spring and a lot of time in camp covering special teams. And not the obvious one, not the kickoff return, but certain, fake punts, defending fake punts, 2-point plays, all of those things that might only happen 3 or 4 times a year, but may be a difference between a win and a loss. Patrick, how about cross-training? If you're an offensive lineman in college, you're probably one of 15 that's on scholarship. If you're 3 deep in the offensive line, you have 15 on scholarship. The NFL has 8. I would say to my offensive line, you got to learn guard and tackle. You've got to learn guard and center. You've got to learn left tackle and right tackle. We have to cross-train the positions because inevitably we're going to have some positive tests, and it's not going to be the same 5 guys over and over. And then I get a young coach at GA to watch every football game that's been on television so far. Because I know when coaches meet with the broadcasting team, they share information.
Sure.
And the little bit I've watched, one of the things they're sharing is, the adjustment and the things they've done. And I'd want to know what all the other coaches have done that have already started playing. And then I would call my friends, if I had any in coaching, that have already started playing and try to exchange ideas with them. That's just a couple things, but that's a start.
And you would just call the Sun Belt, right? Because they're clearly the most dominant conference in college football right now.
Hey, Patrick, I don't know, you probably don't remember this. Last time you and I talked was about the Group of 5 playoff.
Yes. I can't believe you remember that, by the way. But yeah,
absolutely.
that's my baby.
Night thinking about it.
Oh, well, that's I'm sorry for you then.
That's not true. That's not.
Okay, good.
That's not.
I actually feel better about that since you admitted you don't. No, that's my baby. I love some Group of 5 playoff, and that actually kind of begs an interesting question here with the Pac-12 not playing. Who knows what the Big Ten impact is going to be? How many games everyone's going to end up playing? Could this be the year that a Group of 5 team sneaks in just because everything else is so weird and we're going to have such a wild dichotomy in schedules and the number of games that teams are able to play?
Patrick, I don't know. I can't say for sure if a Group of 5 team should have made the playoffs in one of the past years. I don't remember exactly all the situations.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to tell you, I've lost all confidence in the committee. And so I think, if there's one that deserves to go in and it's going to knock out a Pac-12 team that hasn't been in it for a while, I think they'd have very little chance. I think if it's a Group of 5 team and because the Big Ten started late, Ohio State or Penn State doesn't look as good early but looks really good at the end, I think they would bounce them out. I just think that the first time we had the committee, there were no sins of the father. It was pure. There were some Hall of Fame football coaches on there that could watch the tape and really pick the best players. When I lost confidence was the year that Georgia lost the SEC championship and was ranked 5th. Ohio State won the Big Ten championship and was ranked 6th.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last straw for me, and I've lost all confidence in the committee since then.
Well, look, you're on the Patrick Netherton train of I don't believe, barring we move to 8 at some point, I don't think you're ever going to see a non-Power 5 team in the playoff. I just don't think it's the committee is going to do that. They'll come up with any excuse they can come up with, but unless you have every team in the Power 5 being 3 or 4 losses, I just don't see that the committee's ever going to let a Group of 5 team in. They gave them their hush money, their access bowl, and y'all take your $14 million or whatever it is and go run along and play and let the big boys sort all this out later. I don't believe they're ever going to let the Group of 5 in.
Well, here's a way they could do it. If they just made a little tweak. I went back and I looked at all of the final rankings of the college football playoff, right? If you expand the 6, every Power 5 conference has been represented at least twice, some would have been 4 or 5 times. If you go to 8, that remains true, obviously, and there is a Group of 5 in that group. And I can't tell you what year, but I can tell you, if you go to 8, if you would have gone to 8, told the committee to do exactly what they've done, I'm guessing it was UCF.
Yeah, probably.
If they did exactly what they've been doing, and you go 1 through 8, you'll get a Group of 5 in there.
All right, last thing for you, Gerry DiNardo, Big Ten analyst, joining us. All right, Coach, we know Ohio State. We know Penn State's very good. But give us the lay of the Big Ten beyond the upper crust. Who are some teams that could make some noise? Who are some teams that may be a surprise that can jump in there and be in that mix late?
Well, you mentioned the two obvious, and I think the next obvious when it comes to talent is Michigan. And, Michigan, has had a lot of staff changes, a lot of philosophy changes, so you really never get a good feel for them. Even when we go on the bus tour, our access there isn't like it is with the other 13. Obviously, we didn't go on a bus tour, so I'm at a significant disadvantage trying to answer this question because I usually rely on going to practice at all 14 places. I don't know that I could say anyone else. I mean, I'll say this. The West Division of the Big Ten, which your listeners probably don't know all that well, but, Purdue is better than it's been under Jeff Brown. P.J. Fleck has done a really good job. Kurt Ferentz, veteran coach, has changed things up. Paul Chryst at Wisconsin. I think Scott Frost is going to get better. So the big picture in the Big Ten is it's still Ohio State 1, Penn State 2, Michigan 3 in the East. And I would say the West is maybe the most competitive conference, most competitive division in the country. Not the best division, but the most balanced and competitive. And who comes out of that West? The obvious ones are Wisconsin and maybe Minnesota and Iowa.
Coach, you're the best. I know you've been inundated with calls and requests and everything. We really do appreciate you giving us some time. Look, if you do, when you go to bed at night, think about the Patrick Netherton Group of 5 playoff plan. I do appreciate it, but maybe take some melatonin and get that thought out of your head.
All right, Patrick, thanks for having me. Stay safe.
All right, you too. Gerry DiNardo, Big Ten Network analyst, former LSU head football coach.